So you found your dream home in New Jersey. What happens next? I'm going to talk about the 7 stages of the home buying process here in New Jersey. So let's get right into it. So step number 1 is to sign a written offer in the form of a New Jersey standard contract of sale. This is what your realtor will guide you through and explain the contract to you. Now, this contract should include the terms of your offer, such as the price, the nature of the property, a mortgage contingency, the contract deposit amounts, and your targeted closing date, and also what is to be included and excluded in the transaction. And you're also going to want to put in there your home inspection contingencies. Now, once you've signed the contract of sale, your realtor will submit it to the listing agent or the seller on your behalf. Now, your written offer should not only include this signed contract of sale with your specific terms, but it also needs to include a financial qualification document, such as a mortgage pre-approval letter from your lender or a bank statement indicating sufficient liquid funds for a cash purchase, as well as a signed seller's property disclosure statement and a lead paint addendum where available if the home is built prior to 1978. Now, if the seller accepts your offer, you'd be lucky. The seller will sign the contract. Now, after the contract is fully signed, your realtor will forward the executed contract packet to the buyer and seller's attorneys to begin the attorney review process. Now, when choosing an attorney, please be sure to choose an attorney who has some experience in real estate transactions, particularly in the county where the property is located. Familiarity with local real estate practice and customs is very crucial so that you can get your file closed on time. Now, step number 2 is the attorney review phase, and this is where the buyer and seller's attorneys can take 3 business days or more as the contract otherwise allows, or it can be extended by the attorneys. Now, you do not count Saturdays, Sundays, or legal holidays. Now, the attorneys for the buyer and the seller, they're typically going to negotiate different terms and reach an amendment to the agreement, or they're going to add additional provisions to the contract, and this is referred to as a rider. Now, they may choose to either disapprove or approve of any of these terms. Here, your attorney will discuss with you any concerns that they have or any concerns that you have regarding the contract's language, and they're going to make those adjustments to the contract. Now, they should further negotiate additional provisions as well as protections on your behalf. For example, you want to have more protective mortgage contingency and home inspection contingencies, just to ensure that if you, as a buyer, you have to cancel the contract if your mortgage is denied or the seller refuses to make certain home inspection repairs, that you can recover the contract deposit and terminate the transaction without any cause. Now, during attorney review, either party may cancel the contract for any reason or no reason at all. So it is imperative that you let your attorney be immediately involved to ensure the deal is preserved, as well as to protect your interest. Now, once all the parties are in agreement and they have signed the rider, the attorney review process is deemed concluded. So now you are officially considered in the under contract phase, and you can breathe a sigh of relief. Now, the under contract means that a binding agreement exists between a buyer and a seller involving property. The buyer and the seller have agreed on a price and any other relevant terms. So when a property is under contract, the seller may not enter into another contract with another potential buyer. Now, this is because the buyer is under obligation to purchase the property from the seller at this point. Now is when the inspection appraisal, and typically the deposit is made, and the CCO is handled by the seller. Step number 3 is order your home inspection. In a majority of the cases, contracts to purchase real estate in New Jersey are subject to the buyer's right to inspect the property you're going to be purchasing. You're going to check for defects. So you should absolutely hire a licensed New Jersey home inspector, or you might have to hire an additional engineer to complete your home inspection. Now, a buyer typically has 10 days following the conclusion of the attorney review, within which you can schedule your home inspection. You're going to perform the home inspection, you're going to receive the results, and then you're going to raise any objections to the seller, all within the 10 days of the attorney review. Now, some of the items your home inspector may raise may also be required to be repaired by the seller to comply with the certificate of occupancy. And that might be a home a fire alarm, a fire extinguisher. So don't worry about that, because they have to take care of that in order to get the CCO. But you do want to inspect the structural, the engineering, the electrical, the plumbing, the HVAC, and other components of the house. You should also arrange for a radon test, a wood-destroying insect test, and in many situations, you might want to conduct an underground oil tank sweep. And this is all done while the home inspector is doing his inspection. And you, depending on the age of the house, and it just really all depends. It's not very common, but it might be necessary to inspect for lead-based paint. Now, if you have a pool or a septic tank, you'll need a separate inspection for those. Just remember, no two properties are alike, so you should check with your attorney, your realtor, your home inspector for their input and their professionalism on what you should be asking for your home inspections. Don't worry, everyone will be there to guide you through. Step number 4 is your deposit money. Here is where you're going to be making your deposit, which is typically due 7 to 10 days after the attorney review process. Now, you can write a personal check or a bank money order, and this is customarily going to go to the seller's attorney, and they put the check in an escrow account for you until the closing. Now, typically this is 10% of the purchase price. However, each contract varies as to what the deposit is specified. So you're going to have to discuss that with your realtor when you make your offer. Number 5 is the mortgage contingency, and that's if you actually need a mortgage. So your contract will likely have a mortgage commitment date specifying when you must have your documentation confirming that your mortgage is approved for your home purchase. So this is typically 30 to 45 days. Now, it all depends on when your closing date is. So in some competitive bidding situations, a buyer will remove their mortgage contingency to entice the seller to take their offer over another buyer with a contingency. Now, inquire about doing this, the pros and cons of this, with your buyer's agent and your attorney. Now, your buyer's agent will provide a copy of the executed sales contract immediately to the lender during attorney review process. So this way they can expedite the process of your mortgage commitment. And as soon as they receive that, they order a home appraisal. Now, the home appraisal is conducted by the banks and the lenders to make sure that the house is worth the amount of money that you're going to be paying for it. A home appraisal is really a review of the property to determine if it's a fair market value based on the current real estate market conditions and current sales. The appraiser will prepare this comprehensive report, includes sales data supporting his or her determination of value. Now here, the primary objective is to determine the value of the property. The average cost for a New Jersey home appraisal is about $300 to $450. The cost depends on the size of the home, the condition of the home, and the value of the property. and how much detail is put into the act of the appraisal. Now, important issue to consider when you are applying for a mortgage, other than the interest rate and the terms, are the closing costs. Now, these closing costs are typically 3% of the sale price, and these costs will affect the amount you decide to finance, and it's also the funds that you need to complete the closing. So the lender can provide you with an estimated closing cost prior to the closing. So just be sure to use a licensed and qualified mortgage broker or a licensed direct mortgage lender when you're applying for a mortgage, so that you have all your financing ready to go when it's closing time. Step number 6 is title and survey. A title search is usually ordered by your attorney or a title company after all the inspections are resolved and that you have received your mortgage commitment. Your attorney or the title company, they're going to review the title search, and they're going to determine the chain of title and the status of the property, make sure there's no liens or mortgages or any easement or taxes due on the property. The title company that performs this search, they're also going to provide title insurance to you, which is required by the lender. Now, this insurance protects your interest and your lender's interest in the property. Now, in some cases, there are title issues that need to be resolved prior to the closing, but that will be taken care of by the attorney and the title company. A survey is generally required by a title company and a lender, and the purpose of this survey is to ensure that you are purchasing the property and parcel and determine that there are any encroachments, any easements, or any zoning violations on the property. Now, I just want to clarify that homeowners insurance is very different from title insurance. Homeowners insurance covers you in the event of damage to your property. Now, that it can conclude liability insurance for various other hazards. Your mortgage lender will require that you obtain homeowners insurance at or in advance of closing and name the lender as an insured on the policy, so that you as the buyer should contact an insurance agent to obtain a homeowner's policy. And that's referred to sometimes as a hazard policy in time for the closing. Now, typically a mortgage lender requires that the buyer or the borrower purchase such coverage for 1 full year or in advance of the closing. The final step, number 7, is the final walkthrough and closing date. Now, after all the issues above are worked through, a closing date can be scheduled. And just know that a closing date on the contract is always considered a target date. Okay, so once the date is finalized, this is like what you've been waiting for, a final walkthrough will be scheduled with your buyer's agent, and you're going to go with them to review the property prior to going to the closing office. Now, typically it's done right before the closing or a day beforehand. And this is when you're going to walk into the property, you can inspect the home, and you're going to make sure that it's in the same condition that you saw it last, and you're going to make sure that all the home inspection issues were addressed properly. Now, don't forget that you have to change your utilities in your name to take effect on the day of closing. Now, you will be advised about the amount of funds that you need to bring to the closing table, and this is going to come from your attorney or your title company. Now, a closing statement with all the different figures is provided within a few days before the closing. Now, sometimes it depends how crazy the market is. You might find out right before the closing how much you need to bring. And the statement's going to include costs such as closing costs, title company fees, bank fees, recording fees, attorney fees, homeowners insurance fees, surveys. There's a whole bunch of different fees that you'll see on a list on the piece of paper. Now, prior to closing, your lender has to also provide you with a good faith estimate of the costs of the financing and other closing costs as well. Now, once you have arrived At the closing office, you're going to sign the mortgage paperwork if you have a mortgage, or the deed documents, and then you are officially a homeowner after you sign these documents. And that's it. Congratulations, you are officially a homeowner of New Jersey. I'm Christine, your Bergen County Realtor. If you want to learn what the highly rated towns are in Bergen County, watch this next video here. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next Thursday when I post a new video.